Before the first thunder echoed, before mankind ever knew fear, there was a forgotten time. A time when angels walked upon the earth and light mingled with flesh. They were called the Watchers, sent by the Most High to guard the children of men. But when they beheld the beauty of the daughters of the earth, they desired what did not belong to them. And that desire became their fall. They descended in flashes of fire, sealing a forbidden pact on Mount Hermon. And when their feet touched the dust, heaven trembled. What was sacred became corrupted, and the knowledge of the angels passed on to men. From the union between light and matter were born giants, and from the science of the gods, chaos. The Creator looked and saw that all flesh had been corrupted. Then the counting of the days began, the days before the flood. Subscribe now to this channel and stay until the end of this video, for what will be revealed next is the secret of the world that existed before the waters, the forbidden era of the fallen angels. Before there was shadow upon Eden, while the rivers of creation still shimmered like silver before the throne, there was a time when the Watchers gazed upon mankind from the heights of the spheres. They beheld the beauty of the daughters of the earth, and within their hearts began to stir a desire heaven had never known. The brilliance of the stars dimmed for an instant, for within eternity something arose that was neither order nor worship. It was longing for what was not theirs. Then a murmur spread among the hosts of the firmament, and that murmur became a calling. At the summit of Mount Hermon, where the clouds touched the abyss and the winds knew no direction, 200 angels gathered in secret. They were the Watchers, guardians of mankind's destiny, sent to instruct them in righteousness. At their head stood Semjaza, radiant like dawn upon molten glass. Before his light, the mountains trembled. He raised his voice and said, "We have seen what we should not desire. If we descend to earth and take the daughters of men, there will be no return. Let all of us swear this pact together, that none shall turn back." Then the 200, with the fire of heaven still in their eyes, answered in unison, "We swear." And they sealed their oath with the unutterable name of the Most High. When their wings opened, the firmament shuddered. The line that divided the visible from the invisible was torn like a veil in the wind. The gates of the second dwelling opened, and through them descended a rain of light. The sound was like 1,000 thunders, and the whole earth trembled beneath the weight of what was falling. Each step of the Watchers left marks of fire upon the ground. Each breath moved the winds of millennia. The lost Eden shimmered for an instant. Heaven had touched the dust. The mountains bowed, the seas withdrew, and every creature looked to the skies in awe. Men beheld figures of light walking among them, and their hearts bowed in fear and wonder. The daughters of the earth fled, yet their eyes lingered, for the beauty of the Watchers was stronger than terror. Thus the forbidden love was born between flesh and spirit. The song of the angels mingled with mortal breath, and the earth became the stage of a mystery never before seen, the fusion of the eternal with the perishable. Yet the cosmos reacted, the constellations changed their course, and a dark line cut across the firmament. It was the sign of imbalance. The waters of heaven began to withhold their cycle, and the roots of time shifted beneath the throne of the earth. For each time a being of light abandons his post, a star goes out. The Watchers, enraptured by the experience of flesh, did not perceive the echo of their fall resounding through the heavens. Those who remained faithful watched in silence, and the heart of the Most High grew sorrowful. Semjaza, gazing upon the golden plains, spoke to his brothers, "Behold, now we are lords of the earth. The knowledge of heaven is with us. Teach men what the heavens have hidden from them." And the first teaching began. The stars were charted, the metal drawn from stone, the herbs catalogued. Man learned to master fire, and fire learned to consume man. The gift became poison, and the poison, power. And Aazel, the boldest among them, murmured, "If the Most High created men in his image, we shall make them gods in ours." Thus they raised altars of crystal and columns that touched the sky. Humanity, fascinated, lifted offerings to their new masters. What had once been pure worship became luminous idolatry. Heaven fell silent, and the earth learned to call angels lords. For 7 moons the watchers celebrated their freedom. The radiance of their garments became a blinding splendor, and the brighter they shone, the farther from heaven they drifted. Their wings began to darken, and the memory of the throne dissolved like mist. Some, when they looked to the firmament, still felt longing. Others, intoxicated by the adoration of mortals, wished never to return. Thus began the true fall, not by force, but by forgetting. And in the bowels of the earth the first echo of judgment sounded. A fissure opened in the heart of Hermon, and from it rose a thick vapor that reached to the heavens. The faithful angels trembled, for they knew the seal had been broken. The age of angels had begun, and with it the time of the secret. When the dust of the mountains still smoked from the descent of the watchers, the world began to change. Where once there had been only scattered tribes and silent caves, radiant cities arose like mirrors of the firmament. The angels walked among men, and men, fascinated, imitated their gestures, their voices, their eyes that held the reflection of the sun. Every step of the sons of heaven made the soil fertile. Every word spoken brought forth wisdom and fear. The fields multiplied and the human spirit flourished, yet along with the harvest the seed of pride was sown. Semjaza, the greatest among them, built the first city. It was called Ardis, and its walls shone like molten glass. From it stretched golden roads connecting valleys and seas. There the angels taught the reckoning of seasons, the secrets of the stars, and the power of herbs that healed the body. Women learned to adorn themselves with stones that reflected the sky, and men to master the metal that slept beneath the mountains. The world was filled with light, not the light of Eden, but that which is born of forbidden wisdom. For a brief time, the earth seemed like a new paradise. Knowledge flowed like a river, and the voice of the watchers was heard as that of the gods themselves. No people waged war, for all drank from the same source. The music of the angels echoed over the valleys, and mortals believed they had found the lost glory once more. But heaven, silent, observed. For every gift given without the blessing of the throne became a debt, and every revelation carried within it the weight of imbalance. Azazel, above all, was the most beloved by men. He brought the art of weapons and the alchemy of brilliance. He fused metals, forged swords and crowns, and taught men to rule over one another. Strength is the new path, he said, and the multitudes followed him. Penemu taught the power of letters, and symbols began to replace faith. Kokabel revealed the map of the heavens, and the stars became objects of worship. And as knowledge multiplied, purity was lost, slowly like moonlight fading before the dawn. The daughters of earth looked upon the angels with both fear and longing. Their faces shone like gold beneath the sun, and their voices carried the tone of distant thunder. One by one they were taken as wives, and from mortal wombs were born children who belonged to neither world. They were the Nephilim, giants in stature and in fury, whose first cries made the valleys tremble. When they grew, they devoured what the soil produced, and when the earth no longer sufficed, they devoured men. Thus the beauty that had united heaven and earth gave birth to the horror that would divide the ages. The watchers, still clothed in glory, watched without grasping the scope of what they had wrought. The love they had desired had become a burden, and the wisdom they had shared now nourished monsters. The cities began to raise altars to the very angels who had built them. The name of the Creator, once remembered in songs, was forgotten amidst feasts and sacrifices. The stars, witnesses of the ancient order, became symbols of earthly power. The celestial radiance had turned into terrestrial pride, but not all the watchers rejoiced. Sariel, the observer of the west, looked to the heavens and wept. What have we done, brothers? The earth quivers like a tightened string, and the echo of our steps resounds in the depths. Semjaza silenced him with a burning gaze. We are gods now, and gods do not ask for forgiveness. Then the assembly was divided. Some longed for return, others for dominion. And for the first time, angels argued among themselves under the light of the moon. Nature began to react. The harvests sickened, and the air grew heavy. Strange winds blew from the east, carrying murmurs even the watchers could not understand. Some heard the distant sound of celestial trumpets, others the echo of chains dragging in the shadows. The earth knew what the angels would not yet admit. The balance had been broken, and creation was preparing its response. And on a night of profound silence, a flash crossed the firmament, as if a star had fallen upon Hermon. The angels looked and felt fear, for they recognized within that light the gaze of the Most High. It was the first warning, the first sign that eternity had not forgotten them. Time passed like a silent river, and the splendor of the celestial cities spread across the earth. What had once been wisdom became empire. The Watchers ruled over mankind as kings of fire, and each of them established thrones and kingdoms of light before mortal eyes. Semjaza reigned in Ardis, the capital of the north. Azazel built his fortresses in the east. Barakiel ruled the seas, and Sariel guarded the western borders. The heavens were reflected in towers of crystal, and the earth became a mirror of the firmament, but not the firmament of God, rather that of the fallen angels. Multitudes came from every land, bringing offerings and songs. Men called the Watchers sons of fire, and built altars in their honor. The sound of harps was replaced by drums and choirs exalting the new gods. The angels received the worship in silence, feeding upon their own light. Semjaza, in his glory, sat upon a throne of living marble, and his voice echoed like thunder. The Most High has granted us power, and the earth is now our dominion. And no one dared to challenge him. Each watcher brought a gift to mortals. Kokabel revealed the course of the stars, teaching them to read destiny in the heavens. Penemu taught the mystery of letters and secret tongues, and men began to write names that even heaven would not pronounce. Tamiel taught the forging of swords of light. Aazel, the secret of color and gold. Beauty, once an expression of divine glory, became an instrument of seduction and control. Women adorned themselves with jewels, and men with gleaming armor. Civilization flourished, but the spirit decayed. The Nephilim, children of forbidden unions, grew. Some stood 10, others 20 cubits tall, their strength equal to that of 1,000 warriors. Cities worshipped them as demigods. They were heroes in song and tyrants in truth. Many raised monuments of stone to themselves, so tall they touched the clouds. And at the base of those towers, people offered blood and incense. The earth, covered in artificial light, hid beneath its glow the groan of creation. It was in that golden age that the first sign of imbalance appeared. The sun began to burn hotter, and the rains grew scarce. Rivers diminished, and the wind carried the sound of unseen voices. The Watchers sought to understand, but the more they searched for answers, the more they felt the gaze of the throne upon them. Semjaza gathered the princes of the fallen firmament and said, "Heaven watches us. We must unite our powers and seal the world so that the Most High cannot reach us." Thus was born the first pact of defense against the Creator himself. Azazel, defiant and radiant, was the first to oppose him. "We should not fear what is above," he said. "The fire that runs through us is the same that runs through him. If men worship us, it is because they recognize the reflection of his power." His words inflamed hearts. Many Watchers followed him, and the empire was divided between those faithful to the oath and those who sought absolute freedom. The sky darkened over Hermon, and a thunderclap tore through the firmament, not from God, but from the wrath of angels themselves. The human world was dragged into their division. Nations rose against nations, each crying out the name of a different angel. Spears shone beneath the sun, and blood once again touched the earth. What had been peace became war. The cities of the Watchers, once symbols of glory, turned into fortresses and battlefields. Giants marched beneath banners of fire, and men died shouting the names of their gods of light. The celestial song had become a cry of war, and above, the angels faithful to the Most High watched. Michael, guardian of the eternal East, said, "Their world is covered in brilliance, but its light is not from God." Uriel replied, The earth burns beneath the weight of stolen glory. The time of patience is ending. Then the trumpets of the firmament began to sound, unheard by men but felt by the watchers. And when they heard it, they knew. Heaven had awakened. The walls of Ardis began to crack. The fountains ran dry. And the radiance of celestial armor grew heavy, as though the light they wore had become a burden. The watchers for the first time felt fear. For the world they had created, the perfect realm of wisdom and strength, was beginning to crumble before their eyes. And the silence of the Most High was more terrifying than any voice. The wind descended from the north, carrying the scent of the plains and the murmur of the sea. The angels walked among the tents of men like kings disguised in light. Their faces still bore the splendor of the firmament, and their voices carried the sound of deep waters. But their eyes, once filled with purity, now burned with desire. And the daughters of earth, beautiful and simple, looked upon them with both admiration and fear. Thus the boundary between the divine and the human dissolved. The forbidden love, whispered in the nights of Hermon, fell like fire upon the hearts of the watchers. Semjaza, the Great One, was the first to take a wife among mortals. Her name was Ashara, and her hair gleamed like the gold of the hills. When she saw him, her soul trembled, for she knew that this being was neither man nor God, but something in between. He revealed to her the secrets of the stars and the hidden names of herbs, and when he touched her, a spark of eternity ran through her flesh. Thus was born the first fruit of the union between heaven and earth. Soon after, all the watchers followed his example, taking wives according to their desire. The women conceived giant sons of proportions never seen before. Their voices were thunder, their eyes, flames. They grew in fury and wisdom, ruling peoples and governing by strength. The world called them Nephilim, the fallen ones, for their very presence made the earth groan. They devoured what the fields produced, and when the harvest was gone, they devoured living flesh. Entire tribes fled before them, hiding in caves and mountain shadows. What had begun as divine romance had become a curse. The mothers wept for what they had brought forth. The angels, now prisoners of their own desires, tried to conceal their terror. But it was too late. The blood of the Nephilim cried out to heaven. The rivers turned red and the valleys became fields of bones. The earth trembled under the weight of the giants, and the firmament answered with lightning without rain. The angels who had descended to teach righteousness now walked among corpses and dust. Creation itself began to repel those who had corrupted it. And when the voices of the innocent rose to heaven, the higher hosts heard them. Raphael, messenger of healing, looked toward the east and said, "Their blood cries out, as the blood of Abel once did." Uriel replied, "The Spirit of God no longer dwells among men. The watchers have stolen what was not theirs." Then, before the throne of light, the book of remembrance was opened, and the names of the fallen were written in fire. Yet the Most High did not speak judgment, for he wished to reveal to mankind the depth of its own corruption. On earth, the watchers tried to contain what they had unleashed. Some sought the ancient gates of heaven, begging for return, but the path was closed. Their wings, now heavy, could no longer rise. Semjaza climbed to the summit of Hermon and cried, "O throne of light, if I have sinned, receive me back." But heaven gave no answer, and the silence of the eternal was like a sword. Aazel, on the other hand, laughed. "There is no return. We were made to rule, not to serve." And his voice echoed through the valleys, drawing to him the men who still worshipped him. The Nephilim began to raise temples to their fathers. Mountains were carved into altars, and upon them they sacrificed animals and men, believing they pleased the gods who had begotten them. The smoke of their offerings rose to the firmament, veiling the light of the stars. The earth, once fertile, began to close upon itself, as if trying to hide the shame of what it had become. The rivers dried, and the winds carried dust and despair. And among mortal women arose lamentation. They remembered the time when the sons of men walked with the Spirit, before the coming of the watchers. "They taught us beauty and destruction," they said. "They brought the brilliance of heaven but stole the purity of earth." And their tears mixed with the dust, turning the ground as salty as the sea. Then a sign appeared in the heavens. The moon turned to copper, and a star fell upon Hermon. The angels who still felt fear understood. The time of warning had begun. For from above, a messenger was coming with a command, and with him, the beginning of judgment. The winds from the east blew hot and heavy, carrying ashes from Hermon and the distant murmurs of the watchers' cities. The earth, which once blossomed in innocence, now burned with a strange light. For the knowledge of angels had multiplied among men, and the world had become a mirror of what heaven had never permitted. Knowledge, which in the heights was worship, had become dominion on earth. What had been the science of stars turned into sorcery, and what had been divine art became corruption. Thus began the age of forbidden knowledge, when the secrets of heaven were given into impure hands. Aazel, the bearer of radiance, walked among the peoples like a god. His eyes reflected flames, and his hands shaped metals that had never before been touched. He taught men to extract iron, copper, and gold, and women to use mirrors and pigments to seduce. Under his instruction, iron became the sword and beauty, a weapon. The nations waged war in his name, and the earth was covered in blood. He said, "Power does not belong to heaven, but to those who understand it." And the echo of his words sowed pride in the human heart. Kokabel, master of constellations, taught men the paths of the stars and the reading of celestial signs. He showed them the movements of the heavens and the mysteries of time, but what was meant for contemplation turned into superstition. Generations began to worship the firmament and invoke the celestial bodies as gods. The towers of observation became temples, and the glow of night an oracle. Thus divination was born, and man began to seek destiny without seeking the Creator. Penemu, the whisperer, revealed writing and enchantments. With it, men recorded spells, pacts, and formulas of power. Words that once praised the name of the Most High now summoned shadows and spirits, and the air filled with invisible murmurs. Penemu said, "The word is what creates. He who writes the names of forces commands the world." And so, the word that in the beginning had been light became an instrument of domination and deceit. Tamiel, the watcher of waters, taught the control of winds and currents. He revealed how to move the tides and foresee the rains. But in time, men learned to subdue nature itself. They built machines of wind and fire, and the rivers were forced from their courses. The balance of creation began to break, for the sons of earth had become masters of what they could not understand. And among all arts, the most perilous was brought by Serial, the messenger who strayed from the path of healing. He taught the anatomy of flesh, the science of bones, and the mixing of herbs. The gift of medicine, given to angels as an expression of divine mercy, was turned into alchemy and poison. Man began to experiment with death to understand life, and blood became an object of study. Creation, made in the image of God, was now dissected by the descendants of angels. The Nephilim watched all with arrogance. They fed upon war, fear, and offerings. They were giants in body and spirit, yet void of soul. They taught idolatry, demanded temples and worship. Entire nations bowed before them, and the mountains carved in their names became pyramids and monuments of power. The earth no longer belonged to man, but to hybrids and to the gods who had descended. From above, the faithful angels watched and wept. Raphael said, "The fire of knowledge has burned the garden." Michael replied, "What was revelation has turned into a sword against the Creator himself." Then the heavens stirred. Lightning crossed the firmament, yet no thunder followed. It was the silent warning that balance had reached its limit. For knowledge without holiness had poisoned even the roots of the world. And in that time the Spirit of the Most High began to withdraw. The mornings grew shorter, and the nights long and dense. The wisdom of the angels had elevated mankind, but had also condemned it. Eden was no longer in the east. It was buried beneath the ruins of human pride. Heaven in turn remained still, preparing its response. And when the last star shone over Ardis, a shadow stretched behind it. The firmament whispered, and the watchers understood. The time of patience was ending. For when knowledge becomes idolatry, light itself becomes darkness. The nights grew long and restless. The glow of the celestial cities flickered as though the firmament itself were slowly fading. The angels who had descended to earth began to divide into factions, each guided by the echo of its own ambition. The pact of Hermon, once a bond of unity, had become a distant memory. The same fire that had joined them now began to consume them from within. For no being of light can remain whole once it strays from the source. Thus began the time of the celestial wars, the age when angels fought angels and even the air turned to blade. Semjaza, the Great One, watched his empire fracture. From his throne in Ardis, he beheld the columns of smoke rising from the Watchers' cities. He longed to restore order, but his command was no longer heeded. Aazel had risen as a new god, promising total freedom, limitless power, absolute dominion. "Why worship the invisible?" he cried before the crowds, "when we ourselves are the light." And men followed him, offering sacrifices and oaths. His name became both chant and curse. The hosts of Semjaza clashed with the legions of Aazel upon the eastern plains. The heavens darkened with ash and the mountains trembled beneath the weight of their armies. The Nephilim, giants on both sides, collided like living storms. Spears gleamed, and the blood of celestial beings mingled with the dust of earth. It was war among those who had once sung together before the throne. The sound of their swords striking rang like thunder, and the sky filled with flashes, not of the sun, but of lightning born from their own conflict. The seas rose in black waves, and the winds roared like beasts. For creation itself reacted to the war of the gods. Birds fled westward. Rivers changed their course. The world mirrored what was happening in the spirits of the angels: confusion, vanity, and violence. And men, blind, believed they were witnessing the struggle of gods for the throne of the earth. Raising altars to both sides, they offered blood and gold, hoping to please the victors, not realizing that to heaven all were already defeated. Amid the chaos, a few watchers were struck with fear. Barakiel, who ruled the seas, withdrew from battle and lifted his eyes to the firmament. "The sound of trumpets already echoes," he said. "The Most High will come upon the clouds, and none of us shall escape." But as Aazel scoffed, "There is no return, nor judgment. We are eternal, and the fire within us cannot die." His words were venom, and his laughter became a scream that rolled across the mountains, cracking stones and hardening hearts. The Nephilim, children of rebellion, grew ever more violent. Those of Semjaza hunted those of Aazel, and the plains became valleys of bones. When a giant fell, his body shook the earth, and his blood carved craters that became lakes. The landscape of the world changed. Mountains once raised by the breath of angels were now ruins covered in ash. And amid the devastation, humankind, terrified, began once again to call upon the forgotten name of the Most High. The echo of their cries reached heaven. Then a rift opened in the firmament. The four archangels looked upon the earth, and their voices rose like the sound of many waters. Michael, guardian of faithfulness, said, "Patience has ended." Raphael, the healer, answered, "The poison has spread to the roots." Gabriel, the messenger, declared, "The word of creation calls for justice." And Uriel, the keeper of time, concluded, "The clock is complete. The gates of the abyss shall open." And the heavens trembled. But on earth, the watchers did not yet know that the decree had already been spoken. The battles ceased only because the light was dying. The weary armies withdrew, and the mountains smoldered with embers. The scent of iron and ash rose to the clouds, where even the air seemed to bleed. Semjaza, covered in soot, fell to his knees and looked toward heaven for the first time since his descent. And the silence he heard was more terrible than the roar of war. For he understood that the throne of the Most High had risen, not to answer, but to judge. Then a light pierced the darkness, not golden like that of the angels, but pure and white. It descended from above, cutting through the sky like a blade of justice. All the watchers saw it and trembled, for they recognized its source, the presence of the messenger of judgment. The firmament would never be the same again. The age of angels as lords was ending, and the age of shame had begun. The wind that blew from the ruins of the east carried the stench of burned iron and the echoes of the dying giant's screams. The cities raised by the watchers lay buried in smoke, and the glow of crystal thrones faded beneath the weight of night. The war among angels had ended, but peace did not return. For from the ashes arose a new power, Aazel, the bearer of fire, now the absolute lord of the earth. He walked among the wreckage of Ardes with the arrogance of one who believes he has conquered even heaven itself. And his voice, steady as molten metal, declared, "If God no longer reigns over us, then I shall be the God of this world." Those who survived, men, women, and wounded watchers, fell before him. He looked upon them with cruel compassion and said, "The Creator fears you. Out of envy, he cast us away. But I will give you the freedom heaven denied." And under his word, the last flicker of true worship was extinguished. For Aazel offered not faith, but power, not forgiveness, but greatness. His doctrine was the mirror of pride. The nations called him the light of fire, and his temples multiplied on every mountain, in every desert, in every heart. Semjaza, weakened, looked upon his former brother and wept. "You have led us to ruin," he said. But Aazel replied in a voice of flame, "Ruin? No, Semjaza. Only those who still fear the throne call this ruin. I call it liberation. We were made in the image of fire, and if fire consumes, it is because it was created to reign." Then he lifted his hands, and from them sparks flew across the firmament. The clouds parted, and a light like dawn covered the valleys. Men knelt, not before God, but before the fallen angel who now proclaimed himself the new bearer of light. The towers were rebuilt, but not for the Creator. Upon the altars, animals, men, and even children were sacrificed in honor of Aazel. He taught the priests to burn incense before statues made in his likeness, and the sound of temple trumpets replaced the song of psalms. The remaining giants became his guardians, raising colossal stones in his name. And the altar fire never died. It was fed day and night with human blood. The earth became a field of smoke, and the heavens a mirror of ash. Yet among the watchers some began to fear. Barachiel and Sariel fled the cities, hiding in caves. They said, "The blood of men cries against us. The Most High will judge." And in dreams they began to hear voices from above calling them by name. They were echoes from the firmament, warning, "The messenger has already descended. The prisons are being opened." Then they understood that judgment would not delay. But Aazel laughed at the warnings. What prison can contain fire? What abyss can extinguish flame? And his arrogance became a direct challenge to the throne. From the heights of heaven, Uriel descended in vision and spoke to Enoch, the righteous one. "Rise, son of the earth, for the cry has reached the Most High. The blood spilled shall be repaid, and the fire returned to its sender." Enoch, taken in spirit, saw the shadow of the abyss where Aazel would be cast and heard the decree: bind him in darkness, cover him with jagged stones, and seal him until the day of the great consummation. Thus the fate of the bearer of light was written before the judgment even began. Meanwhile, Aazel climbed the summit of Hermon. The wind struck against him, and the firmament turned red. "Show yourself, Most High," he shouted. "If you are God, descend and contend for the earth I have conquered." And the heavens were torn open in silence, not with a reply, but with presence. A flash of glory enveloped the mountain, and Aazel fell upon his face, blinded by the purity of what he had dared to challenge. Then from within the light, a voice echoed, "What you have created shall be your own prison. The fire you kindle will consume you." And the mountain trembled, the clouds closed, and the light withdrew. Aazel rose unsteadily, his eyes now like burning coals. He returned to his cities, but his glory had changed. The radiance that once fascinated now scorched. His followers began to lose their minds under his presence. The giants who served him turned their swords against each other. The empire of profane light began to crumble, and the sound of invisible trumpets filled the heavens. And in that twilight between ruin and silence, a new voice rose upon the mountains. Enoch, the scribe of God, had been lifted up. He would bear the message that angels feared and the world had forgotten, the announcement of judgment. The earth lay in silence after the rebellion. The cities of the angels burned beneath the veil of dusk, and the rivers reflected the blood of the sacrifices. The sound of harps had vanished. Only the echo of mortal groans rose in invisible waves. Then, amid the dust and smoke, a man appeared, righteous, gentle, and unlike any other. His name was Enoch, son of Jared, descendant of Seth, the one who still carried in his blood the memory of Eden. He walked alone through the ruins, and wherever he passed, the wind fell silent, for the Spirit of the Most High walked with him. From his youth, Enoch had heard voices from the firmament. At night, when men slept, he saw the heavens open and angels of light crossing the stars. But while others worshipped the watchers as gods, Enoch knew it was deception. His soul burned with reverence, and his eyes sought the Creator beyond the corrupted light. In dreams, he was instructed by the faithful messengers, Michael and Uriel, who taught him to read time, the number of the heavens, and the secret of the ages. He knew that the moment of divine response was near, and that Azazel's name was already written among the condemned. One misty dawn, while he prayed in the fields of Edrei, the sky opened above Enoch like a torn veil. A whirlwind of light descended, surrounding him in splendor. Countless voices whispered his name, and he was taken in spirit. His feet left the earth, and the wind lifted him through the firmaments. He passed the boundary of the winds, ascended beyond the towers of the stars, and entered the court of the seven heavens. There angels of fire greeted him, saying, "Welcome, man of dust, scribe of the Most High, witness of the days to come." Enoch beheld the glory without form, and his soul bowed in awe. Before the throne the Eternal spoke, "Son of the earth, behold what has become of the world. The watchers to whom I entrusted the secrets of light have profaned my name. Their offspring ravage the soil and devour the creatures. Their teachings have destroyed innocence. Go, Enoch, and proclaim my word. There is no repentance for those who have risen against heaven." And as that voice rolled across the heavens, the portals moved, and the faithful angels wept, for they knew the decree was final. The man of God was led by Uriel into the chambers of the eternal prisons. There, in the depths of the abyss, Enoch saw the shadows of the fallen angels, beings of light now burning in darkness. They wept and cried out, "Intercede for us. Ask the Most High to forgive us." But the guiding angel replied, "The throne will not hear. Man will plead for men, and angels will answer for their own deeds." And Enoch, with a torn heart, wrote what he saw: the tears of the watchers, the grinding of chains, the pit without end. He was then taken to a hall of fire and crystal. There, upon columns of sapphire, rested the book of remembrance open before the archangels. Enoch saw names written in light and others in shadow. The angel said to him, "These are those who remained faithful, those are they who corrupted the world. When the waters rise, the names of darkness will be erased, and only those who call upon the Eternal will remain." The man understood that the earth would be washed not by vengeance but by purification. The flood would be heaven's answer to the poison of the angels. Afterward, Enoch was brought to the edge of the firmament, where the upper waters formed translucent walls. There he saw the gates of the sun, the moon, and the stars. He saw the flames that guard the paths of the winds and the chambers where the spirits of the righteous rest. Every star had a voice, every ray a purpose. Enoch wrote down all he witnessed, for he was to be a testimony for future generations. The angel said, "When your book is read, men will know that nothing escapes the gaze of the Most High." After 7 days and 7 nights in glory, the man was returned to earth. His face shone like that of a celestial being, and the people feared him. He walked to the cities of the watchers and proclaimed, "The Lord has heard the cry of blood. Your thrones will fall to dust. Your works will turn against you. The Most High has decreed, the fire you stole shall rise to consume you." Semjaza trembled. Azazel laughed, but the sound of his laughter was cut short by the roar of the wind. the herald of judgment. Enoch continued to preach. Some men followed him, others stoned him. Yet his voice echoed through the valleys like a trumpet of silver. The Creator will not delay. Repent, sons of the earth, for the waters are already being counted in the chambers of heaven. And when his words were finished, a column of light enveloped him. He lifted his eyes and was taken once more, not by death, but by eternity. His presence vanished from the world, but his voice remained. And upon the mountains of Ardis, the watchers felt the ground tremble. The heavens were opening, not for revelation, but for judgment. The words of Enoch echoed like thunder across the mountains, but the hearts of the earth had already turned to stone. The cities of the watchers once again filled with profane songs, and the giants, the Nephilim, children of the union between flesh and fire, multiplied like storms. Their height touched the clouds, and the sound of their footsteps made the plains tremble. They fed first on animals, then on men, and finally on one another. The ground became a field of bones, the waters, cups of blood. The golden age of angels had become the age of monsters. The peoples lived enslaved by fear. Wherever the Nephilim reigned, the sun seemed to darken. The walls of their cities were built from bones, and in the towers the remaining watchers taught spells and enchantments. Human blood was used in rituals to sustain the giant's strength, and the songs rising from the fires were invocations to the fallen gods. The air smelled of incense and ash. Nature itself groaned, for the rivers fled their beds and the trees bent as if in terror. Semjaza, the repentant leader, hid among the mountains, mourning the fate of his lineage. He watched the children of angels destroy the world they had once sworn to protect. Each time a giant fell, the earth quaked. "We have turned Eden into ruin," he whispered. But it was too late. The decree had already been sealed. From above, the throne watched, and the trumpets of the archangels had been raised. Aazel, however, still reigned. His body gleamed like molten metal, and his presence inspired terror, even among angels. He taught the Nephilim the use of runes and seals to command air and fire, and the cities began to float above the abyss. Men saw those structures hanging among the clouds, and believed that heaven had surrendered to the watchers. But the firmament was only waiting for the final command, for nothing that rises without the name can stand. Chaos deepened. The Nephilim waged war among themselves, fighting for the last fertile lands. Each tribe worshipped a different angel. Those of Aazel sacrificed with fire. Those of Penamu burned written words on human skin. Those of Kokabel drew maps of stars in blood. The earth became a dark mirror of heaven, and in the heart of the ruins, mortals cried out, "Who will save us?" But none of the angels answered. The silence of God had become the most terrifying sound in the world. Then signs began to appear in the heavens. The sun darkened at midday, and the moon turned red like a wound. The winds blew in opposite directions, and the waters of the sea withdrew beyond the horizon. The giants looked to the sky and felt fear, for even the light seemed to reject them. Some tried to raise altars of stone offering sacrifices to appease the Creator, but the smoke of their offerings fell back to the ground, refused by the firmament. The pact was broken. Judgment was near. In secret caves of the north, Methuselah, son of Enoch, kept alive the memory of his father's revelations. He guarded the writings of the Book of Lights and taught his grandson Noah the path of purity. The child grew different, his gaze serene, his voice bringing peace amid the chaos. When he was born, his body shone like silver, and his father Lamech trembled. But Enoch in vision sent word, "Do not fear, Lamech, for this child will be a comfort to mankind. He is chosen to renew the earth when the waters rise." Meanwhile, the nations of the giants began to collapse. One by one, their kings fell, their fortresses crumbled, their weapons shattered against the very soil they had conquered. The power of the watchers faded, and the light that sustained them began to die. Many fled into the abysses, seeking to hide from divine wrath. But the celestial fire already coursed through the air as an omen. The time of angels upon the earth was ending. Then a voice deep as the ocean resounded through the heavens. It was not sound, but vibration, passing through flesh and spirit alike. All flesh has corrupted itself. Every breath has become impure. The waters that were held back shall rise. The stars shuddered, and the faithful angels covered their faces. For the Most High had spoken. The gates of the abyss were opening, and when the first thunder rolled over the ruins of Ardis, the giants looked upon one another and knew their empire was finished. On the horizon, the sea rose like a wall of liquid glass. Noah lifted his eyes to the heavens, and the inner voice called him by name. Thus began the movement of the waters, the prelude to judgment. The whole firmament seemed to breathe more slowly. The wind ceased, the birds fell silent, and even the sea grew still, as though all creation awaited something. On the ruined plains of Ardis, the blood of the giants still smoked, but among the shadows, one name still shone: Enoch. The one who had been taken into the heavens now returned one last time to fulfill the design of the Most High. His presence was light amid darkness, and the mere touch of his feet made the ground bloom. The righteous gathered around him, trembling at what was coming. Enoch lifted his eyes toward the east and said, "The time is complete. What began in light will end in waters." The Creator once again stretches forth his hand over the earth, not to destroy but to purify. He proclaimed that the ancient world was drawing its final breath, and that only one seed would remain, the just one who carried the pure blood, he who would be born to rebuild the earth after judgment, Noah, the promised comforter. That night, the sky opened for the third time above Enoch. Silent lightning crossed the clouds, and a whirlwind of fire descended upon the valley. Uriel, the angel of time, appeared before him and said, "Righteous man, your journey among mortals is complete. The Most High calls you to dwell in his counsel, for the days of the watchers have come to an end." Enoch bowed and replied, "Lord, man is dust, but your word is eternal. Let me be a witness to what shall come." Then he was taken again, not in dream, but in body. The light enveloped him, and men saw his form rise into the firmament. The radiance was so intense that the shadows fled. The voices of angels sang around him. "Holy, holy is he who was, who is, and who is to come." Enoch passed through the gates of crystal, and before him opened the seven heavens. He saw the thrones of the archangels, the spheres of the winds, and the chambers where the souls of the righteous slept. The throne of the Most High shone like 1,000 suns, and from it flowed a peace no mortal being could endure. There the Eternal showed him the ages to come, the flood that would cleanse the world, the final fire that would purify the heavens, and the rebirth of the earth under a new covenant. Enoch understood that everything born of the angels' rebellion would be undone. He saw the eternal prisons opened, and the watchers cast into dark abysses where time does not exist. Azazel, the bearer of fire, would be bound in the depths of Dudael, covered with sharp stones until the day of consummation. So it was written, so it would be done. As Enoch beheld these visions, Michael showed him one last image, a radiant bow stretching across the horizon, a sign of mercy after judgment. "When the waters recede," said the archangel, "this bow will be a remembrance that the Most High does not forget those who remain faithful. This will be the seal of the new earth." Enoch wept before its beauty and answered, "Man will fall, but God will always raise a righteous seed." Back before the throne, the Most High spoke to him, "Remain with me, Enoch, until the end of time. I give you the name Scribe of Righteousness, for you shall record all the deeds of men until the great judgment." And the man was sealed among those who would never taste death. The earth saw him no more, but his testimony was left for the generations to come. Below, Lamech, his son, saw the light fade and understood. He took the little Noah in his arms and said, "My father has departed, and judgment draws near, but the same God who took him will guard this child." The clouds began to close. Distant thunder rolled over the mountains, and across the plains where Enoch had preached, the wind blew fiercely for the first time in many ages. The ancient world was preparing for the flood, but in the silence between the thunders, a promise still echoed. "From destruction shall rise a new dawn, and from the waters shall come the renewal of the earth. The stars began to pale. The firmament, which once shone in calm and perfect order, now twisted as if being drawn into itself. The sound that came from the heavens was not thunder, but lament, the voice of the universe itself preparing for judgment. The faithful angels descended in silence, and the winds became messengers. For the decree of the Most High had been proclaimed, the gates of heaven and the abyss would be opened. The age of the watchers had come to its end. In the east Michael rose upon the winds, and his voice thundered like 1,000 storms. The time of patience is over. Every star shall return to its post, and every angel to his destiny. In the west, Raphael, guardian of healing, answered, "The poison of the watchers has corrupted the earth. I will bind Aazel and cast him into darkness." In the south, Gabriel, messenger of fire, cried out, "I will purify the world, and from blood new life shall rise." And in the north, Uriel, keeper of the cycles, lifted his hand and declared, "The waters that slept shall awaken." The voices of the four echoed through the cosmos, and the firmament split open like a wound of light. The mountains began to groan. From the abyss rose pillars of steam, and the winds roared over the seas. Birds fled, and beasts ran in terror. The remaining watchers hid among the rocks, fearing what they knew was inevitable. Semjaza, now weary and broken, wept, "The Eternal is just. What we cast upon mankind now returns upon us." And his eyes beheld the radiance of the archangels crossing the heavens like blades of light cutting through the dark. Then Raphael descended with fire in his hands. He found Azazel standing upon the summit of Dudael, still wrapped in pride. The bearer of fire looked at the archangel and cried, "You, servant of the throne, have come to bind me? I am the flame the Creator himself ignited." Raphael answered, "The flame that strays from the light consumes itself." He stretched forth the seal of God upon him. Chains of wind and stone wrapped around Aazel, and the mountain split open like a living wound. The rebel angel was cast into the abyss, entombed in sharp stones and eternal silence. Over him, Raphael sealed the name of the Most High, and the fire was stilled. The other watchers were scattered. Michael pursued the legions of Semjaza and hurled them into the depths of the lower firmament. Sariel and Barachiel were imprisoned in the northern valleys where light cannot enter. Gabriel blew upon the cities of the Nephilim, and their towers collapsed like sand. The wind became a blade, and the fire a hammer. The roar of the elements joined the voices of the angels, and the world shook at its foundations. It was the prelude to the flood, the heartbeat of God before the waters. On earth, Noah heard the call. The Spirit spoke to him in a dream. "Build an ark of pure wood, for the waters shall come. I will make of you a refuge for every living thing that has not been corrupted." And the man, in obedience, began his work while the nations mocked him. The giants laughed and said, "Can a boat save you from the wrath of heaven?" But the wind whispered over Noah, and time passed in silence. The days went by, and the clouds began to gather. The sky turned gray, and distant thunder rumbled without rain. The animals began to move, guided by an unseen force, and they came 2 by 2 to the ark. The people watched in fear, yet pride kept them blind. And when Noah entered and shut the door, a supernatural stillness fell. For 7 days nothing happened. Then, on the 8th, the heavens erupted. The fountains of the abyss broke open, and columns of water burst from the ground. The firmament split apart, and rivers poured from the clouds in flaming torrents. Mountains were swallowed, temples dissolved, and every cry was silenced. The Nephilim fought against the sea, but the sea devoured them. The cities of the watchers vanished beneath the roar of the waters. It was as though heaven itself had descended to cleanse what earth could no longer bear. And upon the waters, Noah's ark floated like a solitary lamp. Within it, the last breath of innocence endured. The faithful angels guarded the vessel as sentinels, and the winds obeyed the voice of the Most High. The whole earth became an ocean. Only the firmament and the ark remained. Yet amid the waters and the silence deep in the abyss, the fire of Aazel still burned, faint but alive, waiting for the day when the world would be judged by fire and no longer by water. The heavens and the earth had become one vast ocean. The roar of the waves was the song of judgment, and the light of the sun no longer pierced the veil of storms. For 40 days and 40 nights, the sea swallowed the mountains, and the cries of the living blended with the whispers of the dead. The cities of the angels fell, and the temples of the giants dissolved into the currents. No trace remained of the crystal towers, the golden palaces, or the songs that once exalted the watchers. The age of angels was over, and the earth, purified by the flood, rested in silence. Noah's ark floated upon the abyss, solitary as the memory of an ancient dream. Within it, the last breath of innocence endured. The righteous man looked through the window and saw only vastness, a world without shape, covered by eternal waters. And still, he prayed, "Lord, remember your creation. Let your breath once more give us solid ground." And the Most High heard him. A wind passed over the waters, and the waves began to subside. The same breath that had given life to man now brought rest to a world undone. In the heavens, the faithful angels watched in reverence. Michael sheathed his sword. Raphael sealed the chains. Uriel closed the gates of the abyss, and Gabriel extinguished the fires of the sky. All became calm. The throne looked upon the sea, and the sea returned peace. Beneath the waters slept the bodies of the giants and the ruins of the shining cities. What had once been pride was now submerged dust, and the voices of the ancient watchers became distant echoes, trapped in the belly of the earth, awaiting the final judgment. After many months, the ark came to rest upon the peak of a mountain. The waters retreated like a defeated army, revealing valleys and forests. Noah opened the window and released a bird. It flew across the horizon and returned with a green branch. The man understood. Wrath had ceased. When he left the ark, he knelt upon the damp soil and raised the first altar of the new humanity. He kindled fire, and its fragrance rose pure, without blood or enchantment, only gratitude. And the Most High was pleased, saying, "Never again will I curse the earth because of man, for the imagination of his heart is evil from youth. Yet while the earth remains, there will be seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night." Above the altar, a bow appeared among the clouds, not of war, but of peace. It was the bow of the covenant, the sign between heaven and earth, a reminder that even judgment is born of mercy. Enoch from the heights of the heavens beheld the scene and wrote in his book, "The bow is the smile of God upon the tears of the world." And the angels sang a new song, for creation had been restored. But not all was forgotten. The blood of the giants mingled with the earth gave rise to wandering spirits, bodiless shadows destined to roam among men, whispering temptation and violence. These would be called unclean spirits, remnants of the ancient rebellion, condemned to wander until the end of time. Thus the memory of the fallen angels would never fully fade, and the struggle between light and darkness would endure within the heart of man. Noah lived to see the new world bloom. The seeds sprouted, the rivers returned to their beds, and children laughed once more beneath the sun. The breath of God was again among the living. Yet in the still dawns, when the wind blew from the east, the old man could still hear a distant echo, the murmur of the ancient waters, as though the past still whispered through the tides. And so ended the forbidden age. The sea erased the footprints of angels and the traces of giants. The stars, witnesses of the fall, returned to their course. Heaven closed its gates and kept the secret of the world that existed before the flood. But the echoes of that story remained carved into stone, into legend, and into the soul, reminding mankind that even angels can fall, and that even light, when it strays from the throne, becomes darkness. For the time of the watchers has passed, yet their memory is the foundation of fear, and as long as the bow endures in the heavens, it shall stand as an eternal reminder. Never again water upon the earth, but one day, fire